Welcome back to 3 Point Firefighter. Today, my guest is Chief Todd Chambers of the Fairbanks, Alaska Fire Department. Chief Chambers has been in the fire service for over 29 years, both volunteer and career. He's had some pretty cool jobs. One I can't wait to ask him about, but he's worked for University Fire Department, Capital City Fire Rescue, and the one I want to ask him about is the North Pole Fire Department. You've got to get all kinds of questions about that, but let's start off, Chief. Let me know about you and where you fit in with your department.
Okay. I am late in life to the career. I started volunteering when I was 30 years old. So it kind of sets the tone for where I'm at now. I have a family, I have grandchildren, and we've made this our home for a long time. I've been in Alaska since 1973. I moved up when I was a kid during the pipeline days. For people that are familiar with Alaska, that was a huge time of construction and change, not just in a whole lot of different ways for Alaska. So I grew up through that era. I worked in different things up until I hit that point with a wife and kids that it was time to look for something that was a career, not just a job. And kind of fell into this and have been kind of following my way uphill ever since. I have, there's a lot of people talk about the imposter syndrome, and I think, I could be a poster child for that. I just know somewhere, sometime, someone's going to call me on this and say, you've been faking this the whole time. And it's like, pretty much, that's how that goes. But I'm grateful. And I think the key thing for me is the fire service in the interior of Alaska is a tiny place. I mean, when we look back at the East Coast and you guys, and Midwest and the places where, there's just a lot of people to us, and there's a lot of stuff and more resources. It's a different world for us to consider. We do the best we can with what we have in the interior, and we're blessed by having, 7, 8 fire departments that work together on a regular basis. We're on the same page. They're good people doing good things. In my particular department, this is the big career department in the area. We have 32 square miles. I got 42 operational staff and 5 in admin, and they're just phenomenal. No matter what happens on the other side, when we're talking labor management, that can go, sideways and uphill and downhill, and sometimes we're perfect. But they're phenomenal people doing a really incredibly good job. And every day, despite anything that's thrown at them, they gear up and they hit it again the next day in all kinds of weather. We just got done with 90 degrees last week.
90?
And 90. It hit 90 here in August, and that's really weird. We had 50 below this winter, and so that's the nature of the interior of Alaska. It's extremes.
Well, it's funny you bring that up. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to do a podcast. And I told you this one, I guess, when we first started communicating about this. I want to do a podcast with the fire chief of the coldest fire department yearly, and then somebody from the hottest fire department. So I did some extensive research, and by extensive research, I Googled, and it said Fairbanks, Alaska. So that's why I reached out to you. And then the hottest, of course, is going to be Phoenix, Arizona. And I've got somebody from there that's going to be on the podcast as well, because I was really curious about the different things that most run-of-the-mill fire departments take for granted. For example, training. How do you go about training when you have so many days of the year that are so cold? You mentioned 50 below and stuff like that. How do you even do your job in that kind of cold weather?
Well, I got to say, it sounds bad. Maybe it is. We're acclimated. We're used to it. The nice thing about cold is you put more stuff on, right? It ain't so bad. I can add clothes. I can put in layers, and then we can deal with that part. I have a hard time with Phoenix, Arizona, Miami, Florida, or, places where you get down south where it's not just hot, it's humid. And that stuff, you step outside and you're soaked just to walk to your car. How do you fight fire in that? And, we have our own issues. We have water freezing up, and we kind of have workarounds for that. And we have, we have gear, and We make sure that everybody's got enough gloves to swap out. It used to be, we just did it because they got froze up and you couldn't use them anymore. Now it's because we're learning about cancer issues, and, you know, hoods and gloves are important. But, you know, you find solutions. I mean, that's one thing about firemen, you know, when it comes down to it, and I'm not being gender specific with that term. If anybody takes offense, I mean, everybody.
All three of my listeners are going to be up in arms now.
All right. I mean, it's D Chambers at Fairbanks.us. Comments now. I'm used to it. You know, the thing about firefighters and the fire service in general is they're problem solvers. Mm-hmm. They'll figure it out. You know, we're good at it. A bunch of smart people with very capable abilities. We'll get it figured out.
What about when it comes to like training and having to flow water, move hoses? You got such limited days above 30 degrees, 32 degrees. How do you squeeze it all in?
Well, you don't limit it to that. Typically, we cut off outside training at 20 below.
20 below?
You don't stay out very long. You know, you're going to have fires then. You got to fight you got to train like you're going to fight, right?
Totally, I totally believe that.
You're going to be throwing a ladder at, you know, below zero. You're going to be moving a hose. When it comes to water, once you charge a line or you start working a pump, you know, rigs are inside for us. They're in a heated garage. We run wet pumps. And so we also insulate the pump compartments on the apparatus, and we have hot air pumped into there. And now with the DPF and the regen type systems, you know, we try to route the exhaust through the pump compartment too, to scavenge some heat out of that. We don't have a problem with the pump freezing up. It's when it gets out in the hose. And the way to deal with that is you keep water flowing. So you crack the nozzle so it's always moving. And you create a big ice rink, but it's not fun dealing with any size hose when it freezes solid. But you just keep it moving. Hydrant
20 below? Wow. Yeah. That's just, you know, he gets 30 around here, and I get kind of upset being outside. I can't even imagine 20 below.
Well, it's probably a real wet cold. You know, we got a dry cold. It's like dry heat, right?
Right.
Ain't so bad. As long as the wind doesn't blow it, we're okay.
Wow.
That's the other part. If you're dealing with 30 degrees and it's wet and windy, that's miserable.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you also work for the University Fire Department, and I looked on YouTube about this. Can you tell me a little bit about it? Because it looks actually pretty darn neat.
Yeah, I did 8 years as a captain there. Actually, I came from here. I was a firefighter here. The journey's weird, but then it's like, you know, I'm toting hose bundles in my 40s, and my captain's 10 years younger than me. And it's like, there's something wrong with this picture. He's got a tick, and I've got a shoulder load, and what's the problem? And a captain's position opened up there, so I applied and got it. It's a department that runs, you know, 1,000, well, about probably 1,500 to 1,800 calls a year. It's staffed with the captains and battalion chiefs are career. There's 2 captains and a battalion chief on each shift. There's 3 shifts. A fire marshal, a fire chief, and an admin assistant. That's their career staffing. And then all of the student firefighters, they hire students, and they're paid. And they work a regular 56-hour week. They work a 48.96. And they have to carry a minimum of 12 credits and a C average, you know, 2.0. And they put them through, you know, they typically hire them as after they come out of a Firefighter 1 Academy in the summer. Mm-hmm. And they attend class, and they get time off for class, and they accommodate that schedule. And they're full-time paid running calls, combined EMS, transport, and fire response. They're one of our biggest mutual aid partners. And then some of them, well, probably most of them are in either the fire science program or the Bachelor of Emergency Services. Some of them are in the paramedicine program here at the local university. And they place most everybody that comes through there that wants to be in the fire service. They get them a job. I mean, they don't, that background and that experience gets them hired. And they're everywhere from FDNY to Memphis to Seattle to LA, a lot in Anchorage. We hire as many as we can here. We kind of churn and burn on them. Local departments will hire them, and they kind of have this process where they'll filter through Fairbanks, maybe go down to Anchorage, and then elsewhere. It's an excellent program. I mean, those are some dedicated, engaged, ready to work young folks, and man, they're learning how to drive, major apparatus when they're in 19, 20 years old, and very good pump program. It's really training oriented, and yet the amount of work that they get out of them for response is just amazing. It's excellent, well run.
When I saw the video for it and did some more research, Google, other words, I thought it was kind of interesting that the students pretty much are equal to or outnumber the senior the real, for lack of better words, ones that are paid firefighters, the captains and everything like that. Whereas like in my department, we'll have a couple of people that are new. They're put on a truck with 2 or 3 people that are seasoned firefighters. So that just is a weird dichotomy for me to even get my head around, that you got more brand new people, than the actual seasoned firefighters. That's got to be there's got to be some rough spots with that, surely.
Oh, there is, and it's funny. It's a well-designed program, and it leans a lot on how it went before, but they've managed to develop a culture that those student firefighters, they own it, man. They the new people come on, and they're brought in, and here are our expectations of you to be a part of us, and here's what the standard that we're setting for you to continue. They got a 6-month probation, but they got to fit in, and they take a lot of pride and ownership, and that speaks to the leadership in that department and the backing that they get from the university to make that thing work. It's well done. They've instilled that sense of, this is mine, and I'm going to make sure that it shines. And I think that's a big credit to the people that are, it's credit to the staff, to be honest with you. They keep them hopping, but they also depend on them to set that tone, to do that work for them. There's a lot of responsibility that's laid on those folks, and they mature quick. I
imagine they have no choice, really. It sounds like.
Yeah, they're making, you can actually hit they call it's a student officer position. And there's been some just phenomenal folks that have gone on to good careers that have done that. And they truly lean on them as a leader. You can be a lieutenant and you're in charge of the engine it's in a supervised station. So there's still a captain there that's running the station, but they're expected to run that crew. And here's your taste of being in charge and accepting this responsibility. I think there's a lot of people that first time that they got toned out for a structure fire, when they became a captain or a lieutenant, when they're in that right seat, I think everybody can tell you either the weight hit their shoulders or their gut dropped out. It's like you realize that these people coming home is my responsibility now. And it's good that they get to see that a little earlier, I think.
That sounds great. I'd imagine there's going to have to be a lot more than just average training. I mean, I'm sure that's all they have to do.
Man, they train constantly and consistently. And like I said, it's the culture. It's ingrained that, hey, we don't have class right now. Let's go out and do this. And they have some pretty high benchmarks they have to meet. So it's a good place.
Wow. So they get a degree, they got a paying job, and basically a place to stay.
Yeah. Now that's the one thing. It used to be that they had a dorm space in the fire station, and there's still a little bit of it, I believe. There's not a lot, but there's some. There's a lot of them don't live on site anymore. And, when you look at, how things have changed over the last 30 years, you can kind of understand why. I mean, there's still going to be young people that want to live their lives. And, they're just
code for partying.
I'm not condoning or recommending anything, but let's acknowledge that there are things that happen in college that should stay in college.
Well done, sir. Well done. So tell me a little bit about Capital City Fire Rescue.
That was my stint down in Juneau, Capital City. Again, amazing place. Juneau is the capital of the state of Alaska, and yet you can't drive there.
Really?
Yeah, you have to take a ferry from Haines or you fly in. There's no roads to Juneau. It's a town of 33,000 people or so. They have a huge fire service area, covers 386 square miles. And then they provide EMS service to the borough, which is our county. And that's like 3,200 square miles, but most of it's vertical or covered with ice.
Right.
Because there's a lot of ice fields down in there in Juneau, the Mendenhall Ice Field and others. Pretty interesting place. I went down there for assistant chief job. I was looking for a battalion chief position. And when I was at the U, it's really flat. It takes a long time for an opening to happen as you move up. And they had one in Juneau and everything lined up. But their assistant chief run as battalion chiefs. So you're working an administrative, partially exempt schedule, and yet you're responsible for a shift and those people. And then the three ACs we'd cover for each other and backstop each other and, respond together. Because, there's a lot of times you have a big incident or a really spread out one where you need more than one chief officer there to help. Mm-hmm. Juneau's Capital City is a combination department. They have career staff and then they have volunteers as well. That's not uncommon up here. Most of our departments outlying Fairbanks are a combination of some sort. But Juneau's full on and they don't have any mutual aid.
At all?
So
I guess you said you can't drive there. So
you can't get there from here. So, and that's really common down in Southeast Alaska and some of our rural villages and stuff. It's like they're on their own. Mutual aid's a great concept when you have roads and you have people next to you like we do here. But those places down there, man, it's another world. Ketchikan, Juneau, Sitka, Petersburg, all those places down there, gorgeous. And they're all by themselves. So we would count on career staff coming back on recalls for when we had a good working incident, whatever it was, and then the volunteers responding as well. It's a nice place. It's busy. It's a little less busy than here, but it's pretty close. When their cruise ship traffic comes in, now, of course, through COVID, that was didn't happen. And they're just starting to get some cruise ships coming back, but they could have up to 6 big cruise ships a day in that little port. And, anywhere from, 10 to 18,000 people hit the shores and swamp the city.
That's a whole different type of firefighting right there, isn't it? I mean,
yeah, you know what, though? They don't touch they really don't get engaged in the ships. They might have some training there, but their responsibility is to support the ship firefighting effort from the dock. Most of those cruise ships, they have their own fire teams and they'll train in Juneau at the training center. Mm-hmm. The state was running that cruise ship training. But they've got their own teams. They practice, they drill, they have requirements to meet, and they know the ship.
Wow.
And so, we never had enough people to effectively do that. So you got to kind of count on those self-installed resources to take care of that and then support them. I think our responses to the cruise ships is mostly medical, to be honest with you. They would have people that needed to go to the hospital or get airlifted out or, be seen for this or that.
Did you have a trauma center there in Juneau?
No, they have a small regional hospital that does the best it can for the city. But it's pretty small. And most often, if it was anything serious, they're getting an airplane ride to Seattle or to Anchorage.
How long a flight would that be?
They're about even in distance.
Okay. Wow. Now you got to tell me about this one, North Pole Fire Department. That just sounds too cool.
That's my hometown. Man, I tell you what, I started there in the early 90s and every time we'd go, so if we go to National Fire Academy or you go to a conference, it's like, the Santa jokes never stop. It never gets old. They ask you about all sorts of stuff. It's a small combination department. Actually, North Pole is 15 miles southeast of Fairbanks. It's right between two military bases, Fort Wainwright Army Post and Eielson Air Force Base. When they established North Pole, the people that were kind of behind it all, driving it, was the Millers. And they had this idea that if they named it North Pole, they would attract toy companies to come there. Never paid off. But a nice little town developed, and through the pipeline days, more people moved out there. Property was a little cheaper, that sort of thing. It's about, like I said, 15 miles isn't bad for a commute. And, some of the population gets a little transient because of the two military bases, and you see that roll over. Mm-hmm. But nice little department. It serves the town of North Pole for fire protection. And then outside of the city limits, they have about 120 square miles of ambulance service area that they're currently under contract for. When I was there, started as a volunteer, and then got hired 3 years later. My wife to this day will say, why do you have to work for free for 3 years? It's just the way it's done, honey. But it had two refineries that were in operation. So the Alaska pipeline comes right through the interior, kind of outside of North Pole. And these refineries actually tapped off the pipeline for their product and would turn it into heat and oil and gasoline or whatever. Jet fuel was a big one for a long time. The biggest one of the two is shut down, had some environmental concerns and problems with some contamination in the groundwater. The other one is still up and running. It produces heating fuel, but it's really self-contained. But I mean, that's kind of the basis of North Pole right there. A little bit of a bedroom community, has a small amount of industrial base. And I actually live 5 miles outside of North Pole, even a little further south. But it's where my kids went to school. It's where we were raised. And I spent 9 years working for a really nice department there that's very, very much a family. I started as a firefighter, quick, you move quickly. There was 2 of us on shift. So our shift schedule worked like this. We called it a modified Kelly. Your first 24 hours you were on call, and you had to be there within 30 minutes. There were only 2 people on duty, remember? Mm-hmm. Then you did 24 hours. Then you had 24 hours on call, 24 hours, 24 hours on call, 24 hours, and you're off for 3 days. I thought that was the greatest schedule in the world. About 6 years into it, I realized 2/3 of my life revolves around this fire station. I was actually okay with that. But, wife and kids didn't like it so much, but it was a great job. With 2 of us, most often we were out in the ambulance, but when we got a working fire or a fire of any kind, even if we went mutual aid, it was, we had instances where, we'd get out, set the pump, pull a line, and the 2 of us would go start fighting fire.
Wow.
It wasn't smart. It wasn't right. I wouldn't condone it, but we did it. And I didn't have to do it very often. I mean, usually we got people came behind us. The standby crew is what that 24 hours on standby is for. They come in pretty quick and you have backup, or we learned about, getting our neighbors to help us for mutual aid, or the volunteers would show up, and it got better, but that initial attack to make the knockdown could have been just the 2 of us. And it happened a few times, more often before my time. But like I said, most of our work there is just like here as ambulance work.
Right. Well, I mean, that makes it somewhat worse, don't you think, though, that you didn't get that many fires? When you did, it was just you and another person going in, hoping that somebody was right there behind you at some point.
Yeah, it was full on cowboy time. It was, I'm not going to say it wasn't fun, because it was. And, in the camaraderie, you felt that you were tougher than nails and, fairly invincible. I don't know how many times we probably just barely made it, or skin of our teeth type thing. But don't look back. Just look forward.
We talked a little bit about training, but you were an advocate for realistic training. Is that not?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Expound on that a little bit.
Absolutely. Well, one of the things that's kind of killing us up here is with the, pollution requirements is acquired structure training. You know, we used to do acquired structure training all the time back in the 90s and early 2000s. It wasn't that big a deal, you know, and we learned good, valuable lessons from going to FDI. We used to have an FDIC West in the Sacramento area, and we learned so much from the folks that were teaching the acquired structure training there. And it was, Mike Lombardo and those guys from Buffalo that were really kind of spearheading that up in the day, you know, and it was awesome. And so we would do it in that method, you know, rotating through stations and making sure we had safety in place. And we had a rapid intervention team, and all of these things were clicking in, and then it stopped. I mean, the DEC quit approving permits, you know, smoke became bad. And we lost that ability. So then we turned to burn buildings, and lately it's more mobile-based fire trainers, and you know, it's not the same.
Right, propane firefighting.
Yeah, it's not the same. It's good. It's good to learn certain elements and to get patterns and tasks and, you know, your workflow down. But it's not the same as, you know, watching the fire crawl across the ceiling. It's just not there. We're lucky enough. We have a fall conference this year. The state fall conference is in Fairbanks, and we're fortunate enough to be able to get a permit for an acquired structure burn. And one of our instructors here in the state that kind of has a real passion for that's taking a hold of it. His name's Jason Bust, and he's running with it. And I was shocked that he got the permit. Maybe he sweet talked somebody, maybe he's a better salesman, but he pulled it off. And so we're happy to be able to keep that as a part of it. And he's built this into something cool too, because part of his is teaching people how to prep the building properly to meet 1403 and to do it right. And then they've tied in the arson investigators afterwards, the fire investigators, as part of it. So they'll have a classroom session, and then they'll go investigate what happened at this fire. Yeah. And it's a nice use of a very limited resource. But
spoiler alert, it was started, right?
yeah, it started here by this guy. No, but other part besides fire training, realistic training is. It has to involve, you know, what you're going to do and what you're going to see. And for us, that means inclement weather. Nobody likes to pull hose through the snow, and yet you're going to have to. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. And dealing with the pieces and parts that come along with that. Yeah, I mean, we do what we can. I think one of the things that our department faces here in Fairbanks is our call volume's now so high that even getting training in is a challenge, at least on shift. We're averaging, we're about 18 and a half calls a day. We only run 2 ambulances, 2 engines, and a battalion chief. So we're tight, you know, and that's a lot of volume, and they do a great job of getting in what they can. But large scale, any kind of multi-company, multi-agency stuff, a lot of times it ends up getting canceled or shortened or modified, and it hurts. So that's the challenge on me now. I need to figure out how I'm going to fund off-shift training now. That's going to work. But whole nother story.
Yeah, that is.
You got to make it real.
Yeah, what changes on stuff like that, like, is we have policies that we can't train at night and everything. And as a training officer, I think it'd be a great idea to train at night. I think it's a whole different ballgame. Throwing ladders, extrication, live fire, all that would be better served on both light, when it's day and night. Sure. I've always wanted to get, and I feel silly saying this to you now, I always thought it'd be so cool to go out and start throwing ladders at night when it's ice, like, snowing and, just terrible, because it's just a different ballgame. Forcing doors, everything is different. But sure, there's policies in place where I work that's not acceptable right now. But people can volunteer to do it. And, so the ones that do stuff like that are really aggressive. They really want to get that training in, and they recognize that it's totally different. And when I was thinking about and kind of prepping to talk to you, I just know nothing like 20 below here, but I can remember just trying to manipulate anything with my hands that cold and wet, ladder, extrication stuff. And that's just a hard thing in my area to try to teach to where there's any proficiency. You just kind of have to get through it, You got to really rely on your basics. But I'd say for people like you up there, that's the norm. My hands are always freezing cold. My face is always cold, and we just push through and push through. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, they're good people. I mean, yeah, I think, like I said, I think it's where you come from. You really just you're there to get the job done, right? Mm-hmm. I think a lot of us get into this because, the thrill, the danger, the whatever factor, the cool factor, whatever it was that attracted you to the job. And then after you spend some time in it, if you're really going to stay, if you're really going to do this, I think you find out that what you're doing is to take care of people, and you have a burn in you to take care of people. So whatever challenge comes up, you're going to push through it. You're going to figure it out because that's what's driving you. And to me, that's the core of a great firefighter or somebody I want to work with. Is right. You're just going to figure it out. And I've been fortunate enough that most of the people I've been around and worked with are those kind of people.
That's nice. Cool. That's great. Yeah. I always try to teach my new guys, I call it resetting your minimum. You think your body and mind can only go so far, but when you're at a fire, you don't have the ability to say, "No, I'm not going to look for that person. I'm tired," or "I'm not going to push through this hallway. I'm tired." You have to go through that. And when you do that. And now once you've done that, you think, okay, now I know I can go a little bit further. And then you reset your minimum again. And every time you have a fire or something that really taxes you mentally and physically, you realize you have so much more to offer, so much more gas in the tank than you would have ever thought.
Yeah, I agree. That's a great way to put it too. That's awesome. I'm going to steal that.
Please do.
Resetting your minimum. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, thank you.
I'll give you credit for it, Jake.
Oh, please. Yeah, especially if you start making T-shirts and shit. Come on, man. Give me some of that cheese.
Yeah, there you go.
So you were telling me before we started recording about the Fools chapter. Now, I'm a big Fools fan. I do not work with my chapter near enough. I am a member, but I love it because 9 times out of 10, the people in the Fools chapters are the guys that are really going after it. They're that 1% that's making a difference. They're carrying the other 99% of the people. Tell me a little bit about that for you and your journey in Fools.
To be honest with you, I helped start it, and I got to say our introduction to it was more social than anything. It was a way to say that, we recognized that we wanted to do more than just show up and get a paycheck. And we really liked the social aspect of it afterwards, of hanging out with each other, enjoying a good time, raising a little hell. And we did plenty of that. And then as time went on, and the nature of the Fools, they finally understood that they had power and that they could make change. And I had so much going on. I actually stepped away from the local chapter here for a while, but I got back into it down in Juneau at a different chapter down there. And same thing, a little bit older bunch of people in that one. And probably more my peer group now that I'm an old dude. And so kind of was working with them a little bit. And then when I came back, I know all these cats and I'm happy. And I think they're doing a great job. I haven't re-engaged so much, but yeah, we were fortunate to get, Ben Flegel was a big driver on it for us. And he was our president for a long time. We just kept reelected and wouldn't let him out. He got stuck and the rest of us just kind of, backstopped him as good as we could. And then things change, things go different ways. And some of us stepped out of it and to deal with the demands of life. We were working a lot, teaching a lot, gone a lot, and something had to give. And it was that for me, but they still do good work here and they're still engaged. They put on fundraisers and they have training here locally, and they're still a big force and driver in making sure that training is the focus and keeping traditions alive here in interior Alaska. Our department goes back to 1904 is when it was first organized and formed, and that's pretty cool for a town that only started in 1903. So we got a little history. It's not a lot, but it's a little, and they like to recognize that stuff. I still have my leather helmet that I keep on the shelf. I roasted it pretty good and flash over at a fire that I shouldn't have been in. I keep it as a reminder not to be, to not be such a arrogant person, and, realize you can be humbled pretty quick.
You humble yourself, or the job will humble you.
Yeah. Yeah. I gotta say, I can't, now that I'm an administrator and a politician, or whatever you want to call this position, now that I'm a full-on mutt, those helmets are heavy, and I got some neck issues and some pinched nerve problems that aren't going away, that probably could be attributed to wearing that thing so much. So I actually, I'll let people wear them still here I haven't said that you can't wear it. If you want to, you can, but we started getting Phoenix helmets, those lightweight California style. It's a world of difference on the working. It is just a world of difference. But I'm not going to take anything from the traditionalists.
No, my chief bought everybody in my department nice leather helmets, and really, really nice ones. But some people had the same concerns you said. So now, as you get promoted or a new person comes in, they're buying the more composite style, which is, if you do hold them side by side, they are totally, it's way lighter. There's no doubt in my mind. Yeah. But man, I sure do love my leather. It's and everything it stands for to me is important and vital. It's just, I don't know, man. If I went back on the line, I'm pretty sure I'd put one of them plastic Tupperware things on my head for now. I'd keep the helmet. I'd go to every meeting with it, but I've never seen a Fools meeting picture, where they stack the helmets. I've never seen one with a European helmet yet, and I'm looking across the internet for it.
It's funny. The shipboard guys, they use those a lot.
Yeah.
I never got the guts to try. I'll go this far, but I don't know if I can go that far. Maybe they're the greatest thing ever. Who knows?
So I'm very fortunate where I get to go around, do some teaching around the country, and I met a few people that have them, and they say the same thing. The first thing I say is, "What about hearing? Can you hear?" They're like, "I can hear just fine." 2, it's light, it's comfortable, and they end up liking it. But the third thing they always say is, "Do not take any pictures of me wearing my helmet." I don't want any pictures of me with that silly ass helmet on. And one person in I think it was Arizona, he actually had a second helmet. So when we took our class picture, he put his old helmet on. Nice. And they're like, "Oh, put your European helmet on." He's like, "No, I don't think so."
No, I don't think so.
There's a lot of our industry's ego driven, and I'm not knocking it. Sure. It is what it is, but leather helmet, lot.
I'm not gonna, same thing. It's like, why fight about it? It's like, I see where you're coming from. I don't disagree with you, but functionally.
Yeah. The prices, I tell you what, the prices are different. I think my bosses were telling me it's like $1,200 or $1,300 for the style helmet we have now versus $300 for, I forget what model it is, but it looks just like a leather, except it's composite, but it's nice. It's just like, I got one over there, just like that one.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Yeah. And unfortunately, when you get up to this, this spot where you're putting that white one on, you got to think of things like budget numbers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. That's the stuff that nobody wants to, think about from the bottom end. They just want, give me the best equipment. Give me this, give me that. I need this. And you're like, yeah, but we got a limited amount of money we can put out. So,
yeah, I like to say that, it's really easy. And lately, the thing I tell my guys is like, you know what? I've done all your jobs. I've been where you are, and I've said the same stuff. And I understand where you're coming from. I really do, because you're right here. You're this close to the problem, right? Mm-hmm. And when you're that close to the problem, all you see is the problem and the obvious solution. If you backed up or you went above it, you'd see that there's a lot of other things that you got to account for that factor in. And you're just not there.
Yeah. Well, it's like I tell my teenagers, I've been your age. You haven't been mine. When they try to argue with me, I've been your age. You haven't been mine. So you need to just trust me on this one.
Yeah. Amen. That's exactly the same. Yeah.
So let me ask you something about Alaska. And I'm curious, I might sound like an idiot, but being, for the lack of better words, isolated from the rest of the United States, what about some, like for me, I can drive 5 hours in any direction and attend a conference or something. FDIC is an hour and a half north from me. And then like Wichita, they got their into the job symposiums going on now. So it's easy for me to get to some of these classes all around, but being so isolated, how difficult is it for you, especially as a chief? Because you're the one that's going to have to, plane rides and hotels and all that stuff. And that's a pretty good haul.
Well, we have events in state that can be just as challenging as sending somebody out of state. Down in Valdez, little town where the oil ends up, right? Beautiful place. We in the interior up here, we tend to go fishing out of Valdez for halibut and all that kind of stuff. That's a 6-7 hour drive, one road, and flying there, not so great. It's the weather can be terrible. So it really doesn't it has an airport, and it has commercial flights, but it's just not even, financially viable. So you're looking at sending somebody to drive down there. Anchorage, occasionally have classes. We have the state conference, which moves. This year it's in Fairbanks. The time before it was down in Ketchikan, which is like Juneau. You either drive or, you either take a boat or you fly. So we kind of split our plate. Some of the main body of the state has a certain amount of road system. The road goes from the Canadian border through to Fairbanks. It actually goes all the way up to the North Slope, but mostly there's nothing up there really. Well, that's not fair. It goes up to the North Slope for the oil fields. There's small towns along the way, small villages, but there's nothing major. So then it goes down to Anchorage, and in Anchorage is the Wasilla Palmer, the Matanuska Valley. That's the Anchorage area. You drive 100-mile-an-hour circle around it. That's probably half the population of the state that lives down there.
Okay.
So there's some training available down there. That's a 6-hour drive from Fairbanks. And then farther down is the Kenai Peninsula, which is on the road system, and that's Seward, Kenai, Soldotna, Homer. Beautiful. Again, that's your fishing, hunting country. It's on the road system, and there's some really good departments down there, and they'll have training. They'll host a conference on occasion. But that's about it. Now, after that, rural Alaska out in the west, towards the north, and then out the chain and on Kodiak, that is all remote. You got to fly to get there. Southeast is the same way. And so if Juneau, and they just had a class where they brought up the UL guys, and they had a great presentation for Southeast and had some people attending, that fantastic class that the UL does. Well, I can't see anybody down there. I could send, I can't, it's not in my budget. And all of my cats are given a training allowance. They get $500 a year that they can, go to classes on their own. They couldn't go there for $500. There's no way. Now, it doesn't keep them from putting some skin in the game of their own. They could if they wanted to chip in another. It'd probably be $1,000 when you're all said and done if you housed with somebody and slept on their floor. But yeah, in-state costs are phenomenal. For us to send somebody outside, I usually figure you're looking at $2,500 someone to go to a conference, with airfare, lodging, rental car, anything like that. It's a big budget item, and it's been cut a lot. We have some people that do like to attend FDIC, and they do it on their own. They use their training money, and then they chip in on their own side. And to attend, and they go to the Portland, Oregon Firemanship Conference was a big one. They'll search them out, and those guys that want to train like that, they're going to go.
Right.
We'll support them as much as we can. Of course, sending somebody to the National Fire Academy is not a big deal, but it's really not the hands-on stuff. That's more your, preparatory training for management, supervision, and, making yourself a better leader. But it's tough, I was lucky to be in a time in the late 90s, early 2000s when the state of Alaska seemed to have a lot of money. And our departments got some of that benefit, and they were funding a lot of training. I think a lot of our people just assumed that would continue forever. And it didn't. I would go to conferences outside, and these guys from, I remember distinctly, it was LA City or LA County. They were at the same conference, and they were happy that, it was at FDIC West, one of the FDIC West I got to go to. And they were happy they could go. It was closer to home because they had to pay for the whole thing. And I was flabbergasted. Like, I'm not sure I'd be going if I had to pay for it. That changed as time went on. I started paying for my own training after I went to Juneau.
Right.
It's like, it's like, I'll just pay for this myself because it's benefiting me.
Mm-hmm.
It took me a long time to realize that, I'm worth investing in. And I wish I had a budget that I could just invest in my people for.
I've never heard ever that a department gives you $500 a year to go do some training. That's amazing to me.
Well, you could tell that to my union for negotiations right now.
I'm not talking to any union.
No, they got that years ago, and they've managed to expand it. I think it's a great thing. I mean, it really does allow them some flexibility to improve themselves. Now it actually rolls over. I think we're at 3 years, and at the third year, if they haven't used it, they lose it. It comes back to us to spend, and we have a whole month to figure out how to spend it.
So if they wait 3 years, they have $1,500 to go somewhere. So if they really want to go somewhere, though, and they don't want to put too much of their own money in it for whatever reason, they can say, hey, in a couple of years, I'm going to go to FDIC and use that $1,500. Oh, that's kind of cool. That's just really, really progressive in my mind that a department gives you training money just for training. Now, when I was in Lexington, Kentucky, I can't remember the exact thing. I want to say it was like $100 a month, and you had to maintain 100 hours of training a year. It was something. That was about my only experience with that. But that $500 just for training. Here you go, just for whatever fire training you want. That's pretty impressive.
Well, it's okay. So there is some qualifiers there.
Strip clubs, stuff like that.
You can't just train on anything you want. I had a guy that wanted to use it for physical fitness training. Mm-hmm. He wanted to buy weights for his house. Like, no. Another guy that wanted to use it for dive rescue training. We don't have a dive team. So it's like, it's got to be something that applies.
Yeah. I don't know. I like that weights for the house. That guy, he might be onto something there.
Oh, he's smart. He's a smart dude. There's no doubt about that. Had to say no to that.
Yeah. So what other kind of, what do you think is unique for you all that, say, here in the Midwest we have to deal with? I mean, you have a lot of mountains, you have a lot of wooded areas. I mean, what kind of search and rescue do you have to do for stuff like that? What kind of specialized things that you have to deal with?
I think about the only rescue that we really have a lot of is probably, surface, water, and ice rescue. And mostly it'd be the ice. We have a river that flows through town. We have chronic inebriates that are in our town, and the two combined usually leads to someone going through the ice in a year, or people are just naturally capable of making terrible decisions. That's why we have a job.
Yeah.
And they'll do things like ride an ice floe when the river's breaking up, and we end up going to help them. Unfortunately, we lose. This is a pretty sedate looking river. This is called the Chena River. And it looks pretty tame. It is moving water, though, and it has sweepers and strainers, and we lose a couple people a year in it that don't give it enough respect. It's cold water, so it's not too long, and then you're going to be down for a while. Most of our actual river response is more recovery than it is rescue. If we're not going to get them with the throw bag, or if they're not on something that's floating, we're probably dragging in not too long. So that's the reality. We do maintain ice rescue suits, and we train a little when we can, try to get training on that at least annually. And so we do have the go option for ice rescue. But again, throw bags and the reach is really the foundation for our response on that. That's probably the big one. We don't get too much into search and rescue, the actual ground type search, because that falls under the Alaska State Troopers by state statute. Mm-hmm. and we just don't have the staffing. Wildland fire response, we don't have a lot of wildland in our little 32 square miles, but we're surrounded by it, and it tends to burn every year. It's somewhere. And we've had fires right outside of town, many times, and we'll participate with the response, but it's not our response. We're just a component, providing resources to it. Usually it's one rig with 2 people fighting brush fires. And our fuel type's a little different. It's black spruce, and it kind of burns quick and hot when the temperature's right, and spreads fire pretty rapidly. So we have that. Other than that, every now and then you have those outlier weird ones, rescues where you end up with commandeering a snow machine and tying a Stokes basket to it and going to get someone with a broken leg somewhere.
Yeah.
Those are odd, but they happen. It's like, again, it comes down to those people that are going to make it work with what they got, no matter what, to take care of other people.
That's right. That's right. There's no group better than firefighters in thinking outside of the box.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, we never say no.
Huh. We don't get that luxury.
No. We're the last ones they're going to call. We're the ones they know they're going to come, where they're going to show up.
That's exactly right.
Just don't let them know we don't do no plumbing.
No plumbing?
No, I don't want to plumb anybody's house, or I don't want to do their electrical work. Electrons and the plumbing issues away from me.
Mine was digging ditches and roofing houses. So my dad was a plumber growing up, so he didn't believe in renting ditch witches. He had 3 sons, so he would just drop us off with shovels. So I quickly learned that. And then on my days off when I was in Lexington, I did a little bit of roofing, and I'm really bad at that and terrible at that. So that's my 2 things. It's not roofing and it's not digging ditches. I think I can get by with it.
You make it work.
Yeah. Now drywall is another thing. If I ever had to feed my family with my drywall ability, they'd be hungry.
Oh man, I'm with you there. It's like you can tell where I patched.
Yeah, I did this room right here, and you can't really tell, but it's kind of like a fun house. All the walls are all screwed up. Like, I guess that'll be my office. I screwed it up. I should keep it.
That's cool.
Well, Chief, I've really enjoyed talking to you. This has been a lot of fun. I've been looking forward to this podcast. I appreciate you giving me some time out of your day, and I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, sir.
All right. Thank you.
You have a good day.
You too. Thanks, Jake.